Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Late Night Learning. I am your host, Dr. Anthony Palomba. Now today we're going to be looking at public speaking. And today I'm actually going to be doing a demo for you about giving a speech of self-introduction. This is kind of this idea of how do we introduce ourselves to people and what are some ways in which we can introduce ourselves to people. So let's look at the first slide. So for the first group activity, and usually we don't do group activities because granted, this is not a class at all, at least in the traditional sense. I'm going to do a demo here of what a speech of self-introduction should be. Usually it should be about 2 to 4 minutes in length, and what you're looking to do is to really help the audience understand something about you. You want to think about taking your audience on a ride. You want to think about not leaving your audience. And so oftentimes giving a speech that's in chronological order or makes sense or has logical transitions works here. What you're most interested in here is creating a speech with an introduction, a thesis statement with 3 things about yourself, and then each body paragraph, there should be 3, dives into each thing that you listed at the end of your introductory paragraph. In conclusion, the conclusion should involve kind of a summation of what you discussed. Now I'm going to go off camera here for a second. I'm going to walk up and I want you to study. I'm going to back up just a little bit. You can still see me. I want you to study my body language. I want you to kind of see me from the waist up. If I'm standing in front here, you can see that my legs are pointed out as well. When you are giving a speech, be mindful of the space in front of you. You should be able to use it. If you need to come up to your audience. If you need to back away from your audience. It's okay to move around. You're seeing me do this now and you're still watching me. Being able to do this means I'm able to make eye contact with each person in the audience. And as we've said before, one way to calm our nerves is to make individual eye contact with people in the audience. Moreover, to make sure everyone is engaged, you need to engage them. That means making eye contact with each member of your audience as best as you can. And so I'm going to deliver a speech right now about graduate school and my own experiences. During this speech, feel free to pause it, feel free to do whatever you need to do. I want you to pay attention to some of the things that I'm doing here. I'll be right back. Education means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. For me, in my own life, education has served as a way in which for me to experience a rebirth. For me, a rebirth is reinventing who I am, reinventing who I want to be in the world. Through my experiences at Syracuse University, the University of Florida, and what happened after in my professional life, education has served as the way in which I've been able to redefine who I am as a professional. When I went to Syracuse University back in 2011, I thought I was going to be a television producer. I had been a legal assistant for a few years, and I had the good fortune of working at an entertainment law firm. While I was at Syracuse University, I was really excited to re-enter the market as a prominent TV producer assistant. I quickly learned what a production assistant was like, and it wasn't really flowing with me. I kind of said to myself, can I do something else? Is there something else that I can do that maybe doesn't involve getting people coffee for the first few years? One of the faculty members I'd spoken to had said, well, there's this thing called big data. Big data is coming. And so what I found out was big data was coming for the entertainment industry. And now everybody seems to have an account with Netflix or with Hulu or with Amazon. And so this notion that entertainment companies were collecting data on consumers was something that was very foreign and different. But encouraged by the faculty at Syracuse University, I said to myself, well, if I pursue a PhD, that'll allow me to consult, it'll allow me to learn what big data is, and it'll allow me to work with artists. And so I quickly realized that if I once again pursued another degree, this time a doctorate in mass communication, I'd be able to pursue a different road within education, further refining and defining who I am. At the University of Florida, I had the good fortune of working with Nielsen. Nielsen is a TV ratings company, and in my first year there, I did some survey work and some focus group work for them. There was a lot of work at the doctoral level. It was far different from the master's program. Needless to say, I was up late at night doing a lot of work, studying really, really hard, not really knowing what was going to happen, but knowing that I was creating a really unique skill set for myself. To burn off some steam at the University of Florida, I also went to basketball games. I used to scream and cheer for the Florida Gators. It was a way also to kind of brand myself as a Florida Gator and maybe what that would mean for me in my own professional career. Once again, a kind of rebirth for me. When I was able to finally graduate in December of 2015 at the University of Florida, it was on the Florida Gators basketball court. And so I can remember sitting there and walking up and seeing a bright white light and hearing now presenting Dr. Anthony Palomba. And it was a bright light, like a rebirth. Once again, I felt I was being reborn. And I was being reborn as a doctor. It carried a lot of weight. It happened so quickly, I didn't realize what was going on, and then my chair of my dissertation committee put the doctoral wreath or robe on me, as it were, around my neck. And just like that. After graduating from the University of Florida, I had incredible professional and academic experiences. Once again, feeling as though I was going through some sort of rebirth, moving along and further refining who I am. I worked at Ipsos as a media account manager, and I worked on research studies with HBO and CNN. I moved on to CUNY LaGuardia, and I've since been able to get published several times and do research and work with students and teach and consult. I've had a very, very eclectic life, and it is because of education. When I go back, especially to see my alma maters at Syracuse University in Florida, University of Florida, I tend to go to the basketball courts. And at Syracuse University, I remember seeing the basketball games and cheering for Syracuse University and thinking, wow, this is the place where I graduated and I became a master. When I go back to the University of Florida to watch basketball, it's a little bit bigger this time. I can remember cheering for my Florida Gators as a student, even as an almost graduate. But now when I go to the Florida games and I sit in the stands, I look at that basketball court differently now. And I say to myself, this is where I was born as an academic doctor, as a professional, the first place in which I was called doctor. Education has allowed me to redefine and experience rebirths several times over. Now, what did I do there? There are a few things that I did there, and feel free to stop and pause this as you wish. For one thing, I didn't really rely on notes. That's number one. Believe it or not, you know yourself better than anybody in the audience does. None of this was really rehearsed. I know what happened to me. You know what happened to you when your favorite grandfather died. You know what happened to you when your sister moved away from school and it devastated you. You know what it was like to move away from Chile and come to the United States, not speaking a word of English. You know about these experiences more than anybody else. The key to a good speech of self-introduction is having the confidence that you know yourself and sitting in those moments. I sat in that moment when I was graduating, hearing a voice like God offered a really good metaphor. It offered a really good piece of imagery for your audience. Think about imagery when you are constructing your own speech of self-introduction. It's huge. Another thing that I did during this speech is that I was able to talk about grad school a little bit. I didn't give too much. Why? Well, for one thing, how many people have gone to grad school and how many people have gone to grad school at the University of Florida? Probably no one. As a result, you want to think about what is your audience going to connect to? Most people will never do a PhD. if I talk about that at great length, is anybody going to listen? Probably not, and they really shouldn't either. It's my responsibility as the public speaker to make sure everybody in the room is interested in me. Remember, if nobody is listening to you, it's not their fault, it's yours. Bear that in mind. And so I was very careful in laying out some of the things I did in grad school to a point in which everybody could kind of understand what was going on. But it was not something that was that was over people's heads. Another thing that I did was I also looked around the room, and I also moved around a little bit. I'm also trying to stay on camera, so I am kind of trying to negotiate the two. But the idea is that you should feel free to move around the room. Nothing's happening here. All I'm doing here is moving around. I become more accessible to my audience when I move around the room. Sometimes I used my hands, sometimes I didn't. I tend to be very animated when I speak. If it's not your style, that's no problem. Keep your hands right at your sides, and you can swivel. You can swivel. Love swiveling. Do swiveling. It's not a big deal. The point is you want to seem eager and have some energy, some animation when you're presenting. Another thing is that at the beginning of the speech, I listed exactly what I was going to talk about. Syracuse University, University of Florida, aftermath. And because I did these three things, you, the audience, had an idea of what I was going to talk about. And you could see the transitions that I was making from idea to idea to idea. That's what you want to be able to do here. Tell us something that's in order or at least makes sense. If you're going to talk about your favorite flavors of ice cream, you can talk about mint chocolate chip, vanilla, and chocolate. Maybe you can give us a paragraph on each. Not a problem. But figure out a way to talk about vanilla first if you want, and then how you get from vanilla to mint chocolate chip and mint chocolate chip to chocolate. Another thing that I was able to do while I was speaking was make sure that everything was clear. You have to recognize that a lot of people in your audience may not understand what certain things are. I defined who Nielsen was when I was at the University of Florida, right? It's a TV ratings company. Be careful of making sure that you define everything that you discuss. If you're going to talk about, San Juan, make sure you tell people it's in Puerto Rico. Don't assume people know that San Juan is in Puerto Rico. Most people do, but some people may not. If you're going to talk about being a biology student, be careful when you talk about hemoglobin. Make sure you define it for your audience. This is often something that a lot of public speakers stumble with. You mention a term, a definition, a noun, something that you're familiar with but other people aren't, becomes a snooze fest really, really quickly. You want to make sure that you define everything that you think your audience may not be familiar with or that everybody may not be familiar with. Finally, I ended on something that was powerful. I really strongly encourage you to think about that for the conclusion. Really think about ending with something. I ended with being on the sports courts. University of Florida basketball court, Syracuse University basketball court. I graduated on both, so those courts have meaning for me. The biggest meaning, of course, being becoming an academic doctor on the basketball court at the University of Florida. That's tremendous. And it's a powerful image for your audience to understand. People can relate to having a college basketball court at their college. Most people have seen that before. Or even a basketball court at their high school. It makes sense to use that imagery. Most people can relate to it. And so you want to be mindful of all of these things as you're constructing your own speech. Now, it's probably not enough just to show you a demo of a speech as I just did. So let's look at the next slide. So preparation. When you're looking at things that you can do to practice, you really should think about speaking in front of a mirror. And I know that this is goofy. This is so goofy. But when you are looking in front of a mirror, you might say to yourself, well, I'm going to look weird. I'm going to look awkward. That's a good thing. You should look weird. You should absolutely look awkward. This is weird to do. You don't get up every day and do a public speaking address. And so yes, you will be weird. You will be awkward. You might even look a little odd. It's not a big deal. I still, from time to time, will look in front of a mirror and I will practice. I don't do it as often as I used to, but it is a very, very good way to help you understand, hey, this is what you're working with. And really to have confidence within yourself. I'm able to use my hands. I'm able to smile. I'm able to look at myself right in the mirror. That's powerful. And it's very, very good. It's a good way to boost and raise energy. Second, avoid becoming wedded to a script. Oh my goodness. I go through this all the time with students. Please do not be wedded to a script. The best thing that you can do here is make sure that you are comfortable in talking about whatever it is you're talking about without the reliance of any notes. You know yourself. Moving along in this class, you also know the topics that you're going to be covering in class. Later on, we're going to be doing research. It makes sense to be sure of what you're discussing. This comes with rehearsal. Some people have said to me, Anthony, how are you able to give these public speeches, or how are you able to kind of talk off the cuff about these topics or anything? It's because I know them. I've studied them. It's not hard to present on something if you know it. That's the trick. That's the magic. If you've rehearsed, if you have practiced, and if you've studied your material, shouldn't be that difficult. That's really where this comes into play. And my hand gestures and smiling and being animated and whatever else I do in front of the camera, that's rooted in being comfortable with the material. That's why I can be up here with no notes and I can kind of just talk about public speaking. I've done it before. I've taught it before. I've spoken in front of crowds and audiences. It comes with practice. I can't stress that enough. Start weaning yourself off of notes as quickly as you can. You will see a transformation in yourself. I promise you that. I've been doing this a while. Start weaning yourself off of notes. Start getting comfortable and passionate about the material. Somebody who can speak and keep speaking as I'm doing with little to no notes often has more credibility. And honestly, you're selling the audience on an idea. If you're not sure of something and you keep looking back at your notes, what is your audience going to think? Try to read as little as you can. If you want notes for your speech of self-introduction, you can certainly do so. You can always have notes with you. I'll never say no to that. But I do strongly encourage you to get off of the notes. You'll be a more impactful speaker for it. Another thing you should be mindful of is rehearsing the darn speech. Go get your friends, go get your family. If you're crazy like me, go find posters, a stuffed Florida gator animal, or anything else in your office or room. Create an audience. You might think I'm crazy. Create an audience so that you're looking at certain things in the room. This is going to make you more comfortable when you're speaking in front of people. You're going to be mindful of directing yourself so that when you're giving some sort of lecture, you know that you have to talk to people with your eyes. And that's essentially what you're doing when you're giving a public speaking address and making sure that you connect with each person around. And as I'm speaking right now, I'm looking at lights and I'm looking at cameras. It makes you more animated without really doing a lot of work. I've made sure that I'm talking to everyone in the room. You look more engaging. Also, visualize success. Why not? What do you have to lose? When you are able to visualize success and imagine yourself doing the following. Good evening, my name is Dr. Anthony Palomba. Welcome to Public Speaking. When you can envision yourself doing something and rocking it and killing it and crushing it, it helps you. It gives you the confidence, the push, the X factor. If you can start getting comfortable visualizing your success, you're going to find this to be easier and easier. Will you have nerves still? Will you still have butterflies? Will you still have to fight stage fright? Maybe. Famous Hollywood actress Barbra Streisand, in a recent Variety magazine article, talked about having stage fright still. 73 years old, she lives in Malibu, she's made upwards of 50 movies, she's been on Broadway, she's won awards, still has stage fright. Sometimes it'll never go away for some people. The most that we can do is learn how to manage it. Harness your nerves. And as I came up here, looked around, and settled, take a few minutes to do that. Not a few minutes, a few seconds. Take a few seconds to do that. It doesn't take much. Good evening. My name is Dr. Anthony Palomba. Welcome to Public Speaking. We're all so afraid of those few seconds. And you saw what I did there. I was here for a few seconds. I didn't say anything. It's not a big deal. So many times, in so many instances, many people rush up here and say, oh my God, I gotta go in there. I gotta do it. I gotta present now. I just gotta blurt it out. That way I can go back to my seat. I just want this over with. I just gotta go. If you have that kind of nervous energy and you're freaking out and you're saying, your audience is going to pick up on that. And then you're really not going to do a really good presentation. Own the space and own the time you are given to give a speech. If you come up here cool, calm, and collected, you can still have nerves. That might not go away for you, and that's okay. I still get nervous from time to time. Absolutely. But own it. Don't rush up here and rush off. Remember, the first impression of your audience really starts as soon as you get in front of them and in those first few seconds of silence. And remember what we also said about silence. If I come up here and I do the following, once again, do people lean in? Usually they do. If you give a few seconds, a few things happen here. One, people might lean in. They're kind of curious. What is this guy going to say? What is this woman going to say? They seem pretty sure of themselves. They've come up here, and they haven't started yet. Might it be good? I don't know. Let's listen in. Audience members tend to feel this way. If you are able to calmly come up here and collect yourself. There's a lot of power with silence, and I know that we don't often feel that way. But if you come up here, self-assured, and you're able to command the audience by being silent, you also can decompress and slow down and take hold of your nerves. Another thing to consider when you're giving this speech is tone. The volume of your voice, the tone, is really, really crucial. I stopped and slowed down during my speech when I was talking about the University of Florida. And seeing that bright white light and hearing a voice of God behind me, now presenting Dr. Anthony Palomba. Sometimes we can be just as impactful when we slow down and we're quiet. People want to lean in. People want to know more. It's interesting. You might even be leaning in right now as you're looking at me. Sometimes when speakers slow down, or they get a little soft, it helps pull the audience in. I'm going slow right now. This still is likely to be interesting to you. Don't be afraid to speed up, to get excited, to get loud, and then to get quiet. to sit in that moment when you had to say goodbye to your grandfather for the last time. Sit in those moments. Just because you're giving a public speaking address doesn't mean that you become a robot all of a sudden and that you can't emote or feel things. Don't cry or have a fit when you're giving a public speech address either, but feel free to be happy. Feel free to be a little sad when you're talking about your pet that you had to bury. It's important. You want the audience to know that you were sad at that point. You want the audience to know that you were thrilled when you found out that you were moving from France to the United States, or maybe that you were studying abroad in Africa. Be happy, be excited. Finally, language is everything. Aside from metaphors and similes, watch the words that you say. Try to avoid cursing, other derogatory language. It often isn't good, and it usually makes you seem lazy as a thinker and as a writer. Enjoy giving a public speaking address. As human beings, we often don't have a lot of opportunities to do so. It's a privilege and pleasure to do so, and I wish you the best of luck on your public speaking address. That's all for Late Night Learning tonight, today, tomorrow, this morning. I am your host, Dr. Anthony Palomba, and as always, keep laughing and keep learning.